Hello. Hi, you guys. I have great news. I'm on Facebook as well as YouTube, so a little different setup. Sorry, we're starting a little late this morning. Normally it's at 7:30, but I have a new setup, so I had to get that all squared away. Still working on YouTube and stuff. Anyway, how's it going today? How are you guys doing? Good morning. Today's topic is anxiety. This is Anxiety Basics. This is a part 1 of a 3-part series. So hopefully this is really helpful to you today. If you have anxiety at all, or like you don't even have to be diagnosed with, anxiety, you can just have it in general. So let's say our first affirmation for today. I will get through this. I will get through this. I will get through this. I love that affirmation because when you have anxiety, like it feels like the world is caving in, right? Like it feels like everything is bad. But you have to remember, when you have anxiety, you will get through it. You will get through it, I promise. So a little update on me. I have actually been having a lot of anxiety lately. This isn't urine. This is just water with a little bit of my leftover pre-workout go-go juice in it. Anyway, I have been having a lot of anxiety lately. Something happened to me. I will talk about it on another episode of the show. Actually, probably next Monday I'll talk about it because I want to go over the anxiety 3-part series because I feel like it'll be helpful for you as well as me. I'm getting through it and stuff. But it was traumatic, and I have had trauma in the past, and we'll talk about how trauma relates to anxiety, but I emailed an EMDR therapist. So EMDR is a type of trauma therapy. It stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which sounds like a lot of big words. But I'll explain about EMDR another time because that is a whole nother topic. But basically it's a trauma therapist, and I emailed her, and I'm going to follow up today and get insurance set up and stuff so I can start seeing a trauma therapist. So if you do have anxiety and it's because of trauma you've had, I highly recommend EMDR therapy. And just a disclaimer, since we're talking about therapy, I just want you to know this is not a replacement for therapy. This is not a replacement for medical services. This is not counseling. I'm not a licensed counselor. I'm not licensed at all. So anyway, just entering that disclaimer here. I also wanted to let you guys know real quick that I am going to start accepting new clients for mental health coaching. I've been doing life coaching, fitness, and health coaching, but I want to do more coaching geared specifically towards mental health. So if that's something you're interested in, please email selfhelptodayshow@gmail.com. Also, if you have any suggestions or topics you'd like to discuss on the show, email selfhelptodayshow@gmail.com. Or if you just want to get on the email list so you know what topics are coming up for the week, every Saturday or Sunday an email will go out and we'll say the topics for the next week. So selfhelptodayshow@gmail.com. All right, so let's jump into our topic today. Like I said, this is Anxiety Basics, so we're just going to get some foundational information about anxiety, and today I'm just going to give you a little information about it and a couple tools to help deal with it. And then we'll do a lot more tools and a lot more information in the next 2 parts. So today I just wanted to kind of talk about the different types of anxiety. So there are actually, if you didn't know, there are actually a lot of different types of anxiety. And this comes from the DSM-5, which is the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. And that is the medical book that doctors and therapists and social workers use to diagnose people with mental disorders. But this is not a diagnosis. I'm simply giving you the information from this book about these disorders, but this is not a diagnosis for you. You need to see a licensed counselor or a licensed psychiatrist to get a diagnosis. So different types of anxiety. So there's separation anxiety. This one I'm not too familiar with. I kind of learned a little about it. Separation anxiety, basically like it's an attachment anxiety. So when you're really attached to someone or something, that separation. And in particular, it's about like children, teenagers that have a hard time separating from parents and stuff, so, or caretakers. And then there's selective mutism, which is more of a rare kind of form of anxiety. But mutism, if you didn't know what that means basically people don't talk. Either they don't talk at all, or they only talk to certain people, or only talk in certain situations, like they choose to be mute. And it's not just always a choice, it's because of the anxiety, they can't talk or don't want to talk. So that is kind of an interesting one that I also don't know a lot about, so we're not going to be talking about that very much. So then there's anxiety, there's specific phobias. So a phobia, if you didn't know, is something you're scared of, or you have a fear of. The number one fear in the world, by the way, is public speaking. And the number two fear is death. Isn't that funny? Like, people love, teachers love to say that. Like, number one, people are more afraid of public speaking than they are of dying. So that's kind of funny. Sorry, my allergies are bugging me a little this morning, but, so there's specific phobia, and that is like a fear of spiders or a fear of clowns or something. And it's not just the fear, like this is anxiety. So it has to be more than just a fear. It has to be so fearful that it gives you anxiety. And we'll talk about more of the symptoms of anxiety on parts 2 and 3. So today we're just talking about what anxiety is, like where it comes from, and then parts 2 and 3 we'll get into more of the symptoms and the actual behaviors and stuff of anxiety. So there's a specific phobia. There's social anxiety disorder. So social anxiety, or called social phobia. I actually have some social anxiety. I don't have it all the time, but I think a lot of people that are introverts tend to have a little bit of social anxiety, just because, you know, big places, lots of people, like whether it's a party or an event or whatever, like sometimes just being around a lot of people can cause that anxiety to come up and be like, oh wow, like I can't really handle this, or I don't, like, it creates a fear of like doing it, right? So there's social anxiety, there's panic disorder. So panic disorder is a specific type of anxiety where you have panic attacks. So, and it occurs frequently and often, I guess that's the same thing, but it occurs often or very frequently where you're having panic attacks. With generalized anxiety, you can still have panic attacks, but panic disorder is specifically like when you get anxiety, it escalates really quickly to the panic attacks, right? So there's that. And then there's agoraphobia. So here's another phobia anxiety. If you don't know what agoraphobia means, it's basically a fear of public spaces. So it's a fear of going out. Like, often people with agoraphobia are just afraid of going outside of their house. Like, they only feel safe in their house, so they don't want to go, like, and they also fear like public transportation. They fear public spaces like malls, like basically any space that's either out in the open or any, like, maybe not necessarily nature, because nature you can be kind of like alone and stuff, but like public transportation, like a movie theater, a mall, like that's agoraphobia, when you're afraid to go to those places so much that it causes anxiety. That's the key. Like, not only are you afraid of those places, but it causes anxiety to go to those places. So, and then this one you probably don't think about very often, but there can be substance or medication induced anxiety. So, you can get anxiety from certain substances, and when I say substance, I basically mean a drug. So it can be an illegal drug or a legal drug. Like, obviously there's both nowadays. But you can actually get anxiety from smoking weed, marijuana. You know, it depends on the person. I'm not saying like it's going to cause anxiety for everybody. Anxiety is unique to the individual person. So I'm just saying this is an example of a substance-induced anxiety. You can also get anxiety from certain medications, like some antidepressants, and believe it or not, some anti-anxiety pills can cause more anxiety. And it's all specific to the individual. So I'm not saying one medication or one substance or whatever can cause this. It depends on the person. So, but the thing is, when it's induced by a substance or a medication, it goes away once that substance leaves your body. So that's the key factor, that you know whether or not it's from the substance or the medication, is that once that medication or that substance, whatever it is, leaves your body, so once the lifetime of that thing in your blood and your system, your body gets rid of it, the anxiety goes away. So, and then this is what people talk about most often when you have anxiety, and this is the most common anxiety disorder to have, is generalized anxiety disorder. So this is in particular what I have. I have generalized anxiety disorder. And so even though I have panic attacks, which if you saw my stories a few days ago, I said I had a panic attack on Thursday, and it was not fun at all. They never are, but I don't have panic disorder because I just have generalized anxiety, and you can have, thank you guys, hi. You can have panic attacks with just generalized anxiety. It doesn't necessarily mean you have panic disorder. And that, like I said, that's the most common one. It's the most popularly diagnosed one. And that is the one that we are going to be talking about with the basics. So with anxiety basics, I'm going to be talking about generalized anxiety, which is most, I hate to say popular, but most common. Okay, so now that we've gone over the different types of anxiety, we're going to talk about where anxiety can come from. And I'm not saying like this is where it comes from for you. I'm saying for me and for people I've known, people that I've been in contact with, anxiety can come from these places. I shouldn't say that much. I just want to give you like the places it can come from, and then if it applies to you, like now you know kind of where your anxiety could be rooting from, like where the root could be from. So let's just talk about it. So one huge source of anxiety is trauma. And so I talked about, I'm called the EMDR, emailed the EMDR therapist, which is a trauma therapy. So a big source of anxiety is trauma. And I'm not talking about like major disaster or, abuse or whatever. Like those are definitely trauma. Like don't get me wrong. Those are big, huge causes of trauma, and that trauma can be very severe and very debilitating, thus causing a lot of anxiety. And anxiety is also a symptom of PTSD. It shares, so the symptoms of anxiety and the symptoms of PTSD are very similar. And you are often, when you are diagnosed with PTSD, you're also diagnosed with anxiety, just because they relate a lot. So a big source of anxiety can come from trauma, and it can be like a small trauma, like it can be just like something random that happened to you. It can be something that was recurring happening to you. I don't want to say specific traumas because I don't want to trigger people. So I'm not going to like tell you examples of trauma, because you can just think about it yourself, and I don't want to trigger anybody, so I'm not going to talk about it. So I just wanted to put it out there that a big source of anxiety comes from trauma. And there are definitely ways you can still deal with your anxiety, but really when you have anxiety from trauma, you need to get to the root cause. You need to deal with that, process that trauma. And by process, I mean let it, it's hard to explain, but like when you do trauma therapy, what it's doing is like really releasing it from being stuck in your brain. This is a little scientific, but trauma gets stuck in your brain, and basically like it's almost like it's in your brain locks it in like a prison almost, so you can't get in or out. Nothing gets in or out, and so you have to unlock it in order to process it. That's kind of a simple way of thinking about it. But anyway, so if you deal with that, if you have had trauma, I highly recommend doing trauma therapy, either EMDR or some other type. There's different types of trauma therapy. Look into it. I'm not an expert on it. I'm not licensed. So do your own research and look into that if that's something that you need. So where else can anxiety come from? Anxiety can be inherited. So anxiety can come from your genes, from your genetics. So the way your genes, the way your biology, your body is made up, it can be inherited from your parents, from your grandparents, and it can go way back in the family history. And it can just be something that is carried over. So luckily, even though you might have anxiety from inherited, you can still manage it, and you can still get ahead of your anxiety. So some of the tools I'm going to be giving you are precursors or preventative. They're like preventative things to help reduce anxiety or eliminate it or prevent it from getting worse, right? So it can be genetic. Anxiety can also be from how you were raised. So, our parents, they did the best job they could, right? I don't want to say, obviously some people didn't have a great upbringing. And again, I'm not going to get into specifics because I don't want to trigger people. But obviously, some people had a very hard, rough childhood, and that also can be traumatic, which can cause anxiety. But also sometimes your parents, even though they're doing the best job they can, parents really, they do the best job with the resources, the experience and knowledge they have, right? Because all parents are just trying to raise the kids the best they can based off what they've experienced in their life. So if your parents experience a high anxiety environment, they're likely to pass that down. So your parents might have anxiety. So one, it can be genetic, but they also might just have anxiety from their own trauma. And then without even knowing it, it's not their fault, but they pass that on to their kids, and they pass on the behaviors of anxiety to their kids. So it can be how you're raised. Another reason you can get anxiety is it can be seasonal. So sometimes in the summer, there's just like an elevated energy and stuff. And sometimes that energy, it can either be excitement or it can turn into anxiety. So, and that is something I personally experienced in the summer, is that I did the series episodes like 7 through 9 about bipolar hypomania, which tends to increase in the summer. So along with hypomania for people who are bipolar, the anxiety also increases along with that in the summer. So, and I'm not saying it has to be for everybody. You can definitely be bipolar or have anxiety and be depressed, or maybe you have less anxiety in the summer because you're having more fun. I don't know. But I'm just saying it can be seasonal. So the other thing, anxiety can be situational. So it can just come up based off the situation you're in. So it can be like a very high stress environment, or like something you're dealing with, like a fight or flight thing or something. So like when something happens where your adrenaline gets going and you're like in fight or flight mode, fight, flight, or freeze, like you either act back, like get aggressive, or you flee, you run away from the situation, avoid it, or you freeze, like you don't do anything, right? So when that happens, when you're in a situation like that, anxiety can increase, and that is a natural reaction. Your body is increasing your level of adrenaline and cortisol, which is, cortisol is actually a helpful hormone. Obviously, if you have too much, you're going to be in more of a state of anxiety more often, but sometimes that anxiety is actually a good thing. I know that sounds crazy, but anxiety can make us act. So when it makes you act on something and do something that you needed to do, that can actually be a helpful thing. So also, finally, anxiety, this is probably very common for a lot of people, is that it comes from stress. So unfortunately, with the way society is today, our world, especially I want to say America especially, because there's definitely countries that are happier people with less stress. I've been to Denmark, and there's a lot of happy. I'm not saying there's not people with anxiety. It definitely is in every country, everywhere. But I'm just saying, like, with America and the way it is, it can be a lot more stressful. So there's definitely a lot of anxiety in the U.S. because of stress. So I don't know if you can relate to that. Like, if you're just watching now, like, kind of go back and see maybe which one was the cause of your anxiety if you're dealing with that. So just to recap, it can be trauma, genetic or inherited, how you were raised, seasonal, situational, or stress. So those are kind of some of the root causes of anxiety. And there can be more. I just kind of narrowed it down to what I know, what I've experienced, and what I know from my education and other people I've talked to. Okay, so the 2 tools. We'll go over them kind of quickly because I want to wrap this up and get to the affirmations. So the 2 tools, they might seem really obvious, but these are probably the most helpful tools for anxiety. So I wanted to give you practical, helpful tools that you can implement right away if you have anxiety, especially on a daily basis, or even if it's like a frequent basis. If you have anxiety frequently, these 2 things you need to start doing right away and do them daily to help reduce your anxiety. Or when you do have anxiety, it's more manageable. So it's like you might have it, but you can still like kind of function. Like you can still maybe go to work and have a little anxiety, or you can still like go to school or whatever you have to do. You can kind of deal with it a little more. But first tool is meditation. So I am a huge supporter of meditation. I practice it almost daily. I'm trying to get to the point where I do it daily, but not quite there yet because it is a practice. Just like when you're practicing something new, you have to gradually start doing it, and you really should do it every day to really build up that foundation and to make it a habit, right? Because when something is a habit, you're more likely to do it every day. So meditation, and when I say meditation, it can be like a guided meditation, like you can listen to, I know on Audible there's an app called Calm. There's a lot of meditation apps out there that are free that have guided meditations, or music. You can just listen to like some calming music, like whether it's sounds of nature or water, or just like yoga music where it's just like instrumental, and you can just practice breathing. So, or like the simplest thing for meditation you can do is just sit and just close your eyes, sit comfortably, and just breathe slowly in and slowly out. So and do that for a few minutes. Like that's it. That's meditation. Just breathing in and breathing out, and kind of trying to center yourself. And we'll do another episode on meditation, but trying to bring your thoughts to the present moment. So that's meditation. And I'm not saying you have to do an hour. I'm saying do a few minutes, 5 to 10 minutes every day, and you will notice a big difference with your anxiety. I promise. Give it 7 days, do it 7 days in a row, and track how you feel. Like track how you feel every day to see if your anxiety is getting less after that 7 days. So anyway, meditation is the first tool. Second tool is exercising daily. So exercise or move your body. So our lives are pretty sedentary unless you do have a job where you're very physical. Our lives, like, we tend to be more sedentary. So we need to move our bodies, whether that's getting up and going for a walk, or if you can't have access to like water or pool or whatever, go swimming, do some like jumping jacks, or do some sit-ups, push-ups. Like if you can't move your body in a way, like if you can move only your upper body, do some clapping, do some raises, like move your upper body. If you can't move your body, focus on the meditation, because meditation is so powerful. I want to say it's just as powerful, if not more, than exercising daily. So again, this needs to be a daily practice, and I'm not saying don't take rest days. Like definitely take rest days. Personally, my rest days are active recovery days, so I usually do like yoga or some stretching or something, so I'm still getting that kind of blood flowing, that movement, but I do take rest days. So anyway, that's it. Your 2 tools: meditate daily, exercise, or move your body daily. So we'll do our affirmations, and then we'll be done. I'm going to say you are, and then we'll say I am, and we'll repeat them twice to really let them sink in. So I'll start. You are doing the best you can. You are stronger than you think. You make room for peace in your life. You will learn to function even with anxiety. You will overcome your anxiety. Okay, so let's say I am. We'll do it twice. I'll pause in between each one. I am doing the best I can. I am stronger than I think. I make room for peace in my life. I will learn to function even with anxiety. I will overcome my anxiety. You will overcome your anxiety. Even, like, I'm not saying it's going to permanently go away. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you can get better. You can function better. Okay, so let's do it one more time. Okay, I am doing the best I can. I am stronger than I think. I make room for peace in my life. I will learn to function even with my anxiety. I will overcome my anxiety. I will overcome my anxiety. Okay, so thank you guys for tuning in. I'll leave on this quote about anxiety. It's from Jon Kabat-Zinn. He's a psychologist, has a PhD. He is very big in the mindfulness and stress reduction world. Jon Kabat-Zinn. He has books if you want to read them. I'm actually reading his Mindfulness Basics book right now, which I'll talk about mindfulness on another episode, I promise, because it's very important. But he says, you can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf. I love this quote. If you haven't heard it before, just remember. Sorry. Okay, so you can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf. So you can't stop anxiety. Like, you can't necessarily go, okay, bam, you're gone. I mean, you can definitely work on your mindset and changing it around it, but if it's going to come, you can learn to ride it out, surf the waves, right? You can, the wave is, anxiety is going to come, learn to move with it, or, surf it out. I just love that description. So, also another helpful website that you can go to, because I always want to provide you guys resources that you can find that are helpful, is www.healthyplace.com. They have a ton of resources. I love the quotes they have. They have quotes for anxiety, bipolar, quotes for all different kinds of mental health issues. So healthyplace.com, check it out. Highly recommend it. So thank you guys so much for watching. If this was helpful to you, if you know somebody who really suffers with anxiety, please share it, get the word out there, and have a great week. Short week, right? It's Tuesday already, so enjoy your week, and I'll talk to you later.